All right, so let's get started. I'm here with James Fowler. Hi,
So
James.
happy to be here, man. Nice to see you.
James and I have known each other for about 6 months now. He's been in the UAP space for a lot longer than I have, just based off of things that he's been doing in the past with his background and all the technology that he's involved with. I've been in it for about a year and a half, just doing the video analysis and everything that everybody's seen online of what I've been putting out. I'm starting to put out more and more information as we get more data, and I start to actually build out a web of a network of people that I work with out in this realm, right, this field. And it's helping me kind of meet folks like James and work with guys like this that just have a really solid background and an ability to bring years of experience to the table to help us figure out what we're seeing, because we're just getting information drops, right? This video that we're going to talk about here is from the latest UAP hearing. It was a dead drop, so we have no evidence, or we have no idea what's the background on it, where it came from. We have some details, but it's a dead drop, so you got to take it for what it is. But one of the things that always surprises me, which is incredible, is when we get information dropped on us like this, and even if it's, here's the video here, even if it looks blurry, the amount of information you can tease out of the data is phenomenal. And we're going to get into that. James really did some digging here and made some significant observations. So we're gonna kind of talk through that, and then just try to get an understanding of what we're looking at here, because this one is truly unique. And when James and I were talking about this when it first came out, we saw something in there that was really fascinating to the both of us, because it kind of ties what he's seen in the past and what I've seen in video to this. So there's a little bit of a correlation as far as what we've seen in the past and what was presented here this last week. So well, let me turn it over to you, James, if you want to say, get started with the video and kind of what you're thinking, what your thoughts are.
Yeah, sure, of course. Well, nice to be on your channel. Happy to be here and meet your viewers, if you will. Um, so this got dropped obviously during the UAP hearing in the House a couple, I guess now it's been 3 or 4 days ago. So been a lot of speculation and a lot of analysis, I would say just generic analysis done against this video. And I would have to offer, at the end of the day, there's nothing definitive we can pull out of this. We can pull out generalities, concepts, we can understand more about what we're looking at. But because this is a screen recording of a video, a lot of data is cropped out. I think this may be a daylight video, so there's very limited data we can pull out of perhaps IMWIR, which is what I think we're looking at. So at the end of the day, we won't be able to tell you definitively, hey, this is what it is or it isn't, but we can for sure draw correlations and understanding, deeper understanding of what we're looking at, and eliminate some possibilities, as well as gravitate towards more conclusions. So really happy to sit here and kind of go over step by step what we're thinking that we're looking at, what it means to us, and what it means to the UAP community as well as humanity.
So yeah, I think that's what we do, right? Let's kind of go through almost like how I operate. Just we'll look at the video, we'll kind of talk through it, what we're seeing observationally. We'll make the points, make the big points, the finer points, and we'll just continue to build on it as we do that. So first thing we'll do is just go in and literally just add a little bit of contrast so we can just see more of the details on the finer edges in the video. That's basically the first step. And then I'll add a little bit of a dehaze in there, which then will also help bring through a little bit more detail. So I don't do anything with AI. We're just, like I said, we're kind of crunching in the contrast line so we can see the details and the separation between all the objects in there. And sometimes when I add dehaze, it adds a little bit of color, which we don't want, because this is not a color, this is infrared. Probably long wave or short wave, not sure.
Yeah, it looks like middle wave infrared to me, but I could be mistaken.
Yeah.
And I think standard on those chipsets may be shortwave and middle wave, but again, I'm not a pred pilot, so I could be mistaken on that as well.
Okay. I assume this is laser.
Yeah, laser
Laser
designator.
designation.
And I think it's important, like we can go over kind of the facts that we know.
Mm-hmm.
We're told that this came off of an MQ-9 Reaper. We're also told that this happened in off the coast of Yemen, And we know the recording shows that 30 October 2024. And from the north-seeking arrow on the imagery, we can see that the azimuth is more or less 300 degrees magnetic, south to north by northwest. So those are things we can pull out of the video kind of as facts. Everything else after that is assumptions or conclusions. So, as Billy starts playing this, we're going to be able to tease out some of the assumptions we have here, such as the speed. We have no way of knowing the speed of this craft, if it's standing still, if it's moving. To me, it looks like it's moving right to left, but hard to say with any veracity, and I don't think anybody can say with the information we have now if it's actually moving and at what speed it is moving. Something else to note is this is probably a two-ship setup for this shot. The video we're looking at now is the observation ship set, and then the other airframe is off camera, I believe, probably providing the shot to impact where the laser is pointing. So with that, Billy, what did I leave out of there you want to add?
Well, that's actually interesting you brought that up, because that was one thing that I had noticed and I didn't really know why. But if this is the Hellfire, it very clearly is coming from out of frame. So that would indicate, like you said, a two ship shot or a two ship setup. And I'm assuming the reason why it looks like it's moving so slow is because a lot of the speed is in moving away and towards the target, not lateral across frame, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You can't, the Hellfires apparently fly up to Mach 1.3. This is only perhaps at 12,000 feet MSL where they're firing this at. So the fact that it's moving out very quickly is kind of lost with the parallax and just the view. I think it does look slow to me, but I think that's an artifact of how it was recorded.
Okay. All right. And then if we just get right into it, right? Here's the most important part, the point of impact. So one of the things, if this is in infrared, right? It's detecting heat, looks like it's white hot. I would assume there'd be a massive flash if there was a detonation. And I think that's the one thing that most people are saying, is that they're not seeing that. They're not actually seeing a detonation.
Well, one thing, Billy, that you're also not seeing. So if you kind of go back and forth on the missile inbound, Hellfire missiles only fire the rocket for 1 to 2 seconds after that leaves the rail. So the rest of the time it's in a glide, controlled glide. So normally on manned aviation or rocket motors, you can see a contrail in infrared. So you're not seeing a contrail on the rocket, which is expected, but you're also not seeing a contrail on the target. So that's actually a clue that this probably isn't a gas-powered engine capability that we're looking at this being targeted in this instance.
Gotcha. All right. So now you're talking balloon, right? If it's just out there floating.
Yeah, if it's prosaic, I think it would be a balloon target of some type. Although we can get into that. I think it's important to note, based on Mick West, there've been a few others who've done the trigonometry and said, hey, this thing's probably at about flight level 120 or 12,000 feet MSL, which we concur with. We've done the math as well and analyzed that. It does look like it's somewhere around 12,000 feet. And then the MQ-9 that's watching this happen is somewhere between 24,000 feet and 26,000 feet, depending. So this angle we're looking at is actually, it's not straight down, it's not nadir or directly over. We're actually looking down perhaps a 45-degree angle from the drone, from the Reaper, down at this target. And we're probably about 3.5 miles away, ground distance, and slant range are about 5 nautical miles away from the target. So think about, the look angle as you're looking at this. Billy mentioned this being a balloon. Well, you're not seeing a typical high altitude or even micro high altitude or even a low altitude balloon where you have the bottom that's a point, kind of like a light bulb. You're not seeing that part. This looks more like a dirigible or some other configuration if it were a balloon. So that's important to note what you can and cannot see here and what you expect to see based on the prosaic explanations of what this could be.
Yeah, it kind of, if it was going to be a balloon, it kind of reminds me of Fat Albert down in the Keys. They have that one sky. It's just I guess it's just an aerial platform that's just shooting radar and doing surveillance over the keys area. So it would be kind of like that shape. Um, so this is, so just real quick to touch on this part, right? This is a zero detonation, and very clearly the rocket or the missile continues on after hitting it. So it has not exploded. And just from a scientific standpoint, we take a measurement right down here. This is the scopes. This measures the amount of luminosity in the entire frame. So if we spread this out, it will basically match what the overall frame is. So this peak right here, wherever I put my little pointer, that's showing where on the actual waveform it's identifying the level of luminosity. So right up here, this is actually the brightness of the actual object that we're looking at. And as this comes in, you can actually see when there's the impact, there's actually a reduction in luminosity. And if this was a detonation, there's going to be a lot of heat. It's going to be an energetic action. So I would assume we would see a pretty significant peak right here as it came in and left.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if this were something prosaic like a balloon, if that could be representative of the skin from perhaps out of sun view being rotated into the top of the airframe so that so it's cooler perhaps. But that'd be based on a balloon concept. But it is fascinating that the luminosity changes at impact instead of increasing. Even with a hidden explosion, I would expect more luminosity in frame. That's interesting.
Yeah. And then you look at the action, right? So this is coming in, this missile's coming in with a lot of kinetic energy, right? Now there's two types of Hellfire, I think, right? There's one that actually does detonate, and there's another one that has blades that basically pop out and are used to just...
Yeah, I think there's many deviations of different types of Hellfires. I'm not a Hellfire guy.
Mhm.
It's not my craft or my backgrounds, but I agree that there's kinetic capabilities, and then there's non-explosive.
That's a major point, right? If this is a Hellfire missile and it's one of the ones that do explode, then hitting something very soft and passing through it probably won't ignite it. Or it could be basically one of those just kinetic style weapons that just punches through whatever it hits with a lot of force to do all the damage. Now, what's interesting, and what I see here between these two frames, right? So this is a 30 frame per second video. So basically what that's saying is between this frame and this frame, it's 1/30th of a second, right? And there's a lot happening in that really short amount of time. The object itself, what did you calculate it out to be size-wise?
Well, actually, can you go forward a little bit so that we can see the missile when it has the I think the missile actually shows itself out of the plume that is there from the bleed over right there.
Yeah.
So if I've looked at a lot of images of different things in middle wave and shortwave infrared, and when you're looking at, say, an airliner, sometimes in infrared it'll just be a blob. It won't have edges, it won't have any shape to it, and that's because of the reflectivity a lot of times of the sun, where it's just making it impossible to make it out without going to electro-optical or daylight camera. So I think one of the clues we have here is that right here in this frame for the next 2 seconds, basically I think you're seeing the actual missile itself underneath the blob of the infrared that's unviewable, and I think that's because the missile's in a turn, and basically the sun is shifting relative to how we're looking at it. So I don't think the missile's white, and I could be wrong. And I don't think that full image is actually the missile. I think it's shorter. I think the black is more representative of the actual missile itself. So what we did is we took, I took the missile length as you see it there on the screen. We know these missiles are typically somewhere between 64 inches long, and they're only about 7 inches wide in diameter. So we took that and used that as a unit of measure, chopping off some of the white, which is probably just blob IR blur, if you will.
Just
And then we
bloom.
measured, and then we measured the actual craft, the target itself, and came up with more or less a size of 15 to 20 feet long by 1.5 to 3 feet wide. So the balloon, the UAP, whatever it is that was impacted, the target is somewhere between, like I said, 1.5 to 3 feet wide and 15 to 20 feet long, based on those measurements. Now, those could be grossly inaccurate. We could be mistaken. I could be mistaken in what I just stated about the black product being the actual missile, as well as this could not be a Hellfire. We don't know. No one's made a declarative statement that this is a Hellfire, and therefore our measurements could be wrong. So take it with a giant grain of salt. That we're talking about as big as 20 feet long by 3 feet wide ish, in terms of proportions that we're looking at here. So when you talk about the movement of the nose, if you will, the forward facing, the part facing the incoming missile deflecting on impact, deflectability, I think you measured somewhere between 5 and 6 feet, more or less, of a deflection.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty significant, and it's instantaneous. So a lot of energy was imparted to this object from the missile itself. So definitely a deflection, not a detonation, as far as everything that we're looking at here from a luminosity standpoint, and just in the movement of everything. So the question then becomes, and this is where I get a little confused with the amount of people that are really heavy on the balloon aspect of this. This has to be a rigid body. That's the only way that you're going to have the object itself stay together, because you can see it still has its form right here, and it's moving 5, 6, 7 feet over to here. So it's rotated 45 degrees after being hit by basically the equivalent of an SUV driving at 180 miles an hour, I think is the kinetic impact. When I did the calculation on if it was a Hellfire missile, just based on weight and speed, potential speed. So like James said, grain of salt, but it's a lot of energy, right? The thing is, it's designed to go break stuff, right? These missiles are just designed to destroy, so it's gonna hit hard, and it very clearly does. So it imparts a lot of energy into this, and really moves it. So from what, I don't know, James, if you agree with this or not, but what I'm seeing here, this is a rigid object. If this was like a latex balloon or a mylar balloon, it's not going to have the rigidity to take an impact and actually deflect a missile and move itself. It would just stay in place, and it would just get a hole punched right through it.
Yeah, that's what I would expect. On the missile itself, I took actually a straight edge and put it on screen and went frame by frame. And the missile does deflect as well after the impact or during the impact. It only deflects a couple degrees, call it 2 to 3 degrees, a little bit to the up position, if you will, a more horizontal. And you see it kind of curve back around. I'm assuming it's in a control, its flight control surfaces are trying to correct to some measurement. But you definitely see both the target object and the missile deflect from the impact, which again is very interesting. I would expect with the balloon, specifically a latex balloon, I would expect this to pop much like the Chinese balloon did when we shot that one down. Was that with the Hellfire? I didn't do my homework.
That was a Sidewinder.
A Sidewinder?
Yeah.
Okay. That one just literally popped like any balloon you would expect, and that was a high altitude balloon. So it was the way it just disintegrated on impact. You're not seeing this here. Furthermore, if this were a mylar balloon, maybe filled with helium or hydrogen, perhaps it could have this effect. But I just don't see mylar being used in a 20-foot long balloon, 3 feet wide, being really heavy. I just don't see a way in which the skin could be heavy enough to cause it to bend like this, as fast and hard as it did, and also deflect a missile. Like I would expect the missile just like a minivan, just drive straight through it, like it's not even there. Yeah. So I find that highly anomalous or incongruent with what I would expect. Again, I'm not a missile expert. How many aerial targets have I blown up? The answer is 0. So, and I don't know how many pilots, I haven't found one yet that could say, yes, I've shot an aerial target that was a balloon with a Hellfire, and here's the imagery that's unclassified, and we're reviewing it and match this. And I would have expected pilots like that to speak up, and to date, I've met nobody that's made that point.
Okay.
Oh, sweet.
And I think,
We could go over some of those images of what the target could be, like the target sock, the target drone,
mhm.
and the balloons, if you want.
Okay. Let's just hit this real quick.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So this is I went and took some shots of the actual Chinese balloon that got blown up a little while ago, and this was hit with the Sidewinder, and you can see right here we have the two frames from the object that we're talking about from the UAP hearing. So this is right before it got impacted, and then right after it. And this is what I would expect from a, you know, I'm looking at this kinetically, energetically. How is it going to behave? And this is what I would believe a balloon would do, right? Because it's very lightweight. It's extremely weak, I guess is really the best way to say it. It's not a rigid object. If you punch it, it's going to deflect. If you throw a baseball at it, it's going to bounce into it and bounce out of it. If you shoot a missile at it, it's going to pass right through it. And there's going to be zero movement on the overall object. So when I look at this and I look at this, just, without even having the experience of shooting missiles at things, to me, from a kinetic standpoint, I'm just looking at the pure physics of it. A balloon just isn't going to move like that. It's not going to move 5-6 feet in a 1/30th of a second like that. I just don't see that as even a possibility, right? And then even to take enough energy out of the missile that's coming in to redirect it. So this is an extremely energetic situation. There's a lot of energy getting passed between the object that's flying the UAP and the missile itself. The UAP was staying together, right? And to me, this is a rigid object. And now they do talk, right? I see a lot. Well, it does get kind of flappy in the end after it takes the impact, right? If we watch it as it comes off of screen, right? So it starts to turn into what appears to be almost like a blanket, right? Like you would expect um, maybe a non-flexible balloon, right? Something that is like an old school dirigible style where it is just this size and it's this shape and you just fill it up and you pressurize it to like just a couple psi. And the problem is, even after this, and you go further down the road, what I don't understand is how is it continuing to maintain a shape? It almost seems like it returns back to, and this is far away, and I know it's far away, but the fact that it doesn't turn into what should be, I imagine, something that's just falling out of the sky. It should turn into almost like a ribbon as it's falling, right? Because just aerodynamics is gonna pull on it, but we don't see that here.
Billy, it's interesting is post-impact, the camera operator, sensor operator was zoomed in on the target for the impact and then zoomed out not to lose it, but didn't, at least in this video, return back into an enhanced zoomed in image, which may mean that post-impact, the target was splashed, they didn't care anymore, mission accomplished, right? We don't know that because one, we weren't there, and two, we don't have any information to corroborate any story on this. That is telling in itself that you have to zoom in and enhance to see it now, rather than having the system operator using,
Mm.
10, 20, 30x optical zoom to look at it like they were before the impact. So again, like as we talk about prosaic nature or lack thereof, that's a clue perhaps that maybe mission accomplished. I would think if we're shooting down a UFO, that the operator would be intimately interested in understanding what they're looking at, and whoever's driving them on whatever jock or talk floor or operation center would be telling the operator to zoom in and let them see it again. And for all we know, that happened after this recording, perhaps,
Mm.
but it didn't happen right now, which is interesting.
Yeah.
It may also point to the fact that it's if it was in a forward flight moving to the north as it looks like it is by northwest, perhaps they've zoomed out to see what happens so they don't lose sight of it. So really, like there's no way to know or to peel this back, but I think you have to take both thought lines into consideration of motivation and why they're operating the way they're operating post impact.
Yeah, that's a really good point. When you just think about behavior, right? Because behavior is all part of it, right? Initially, it's we got to blow this thing up, and then, like you said, mission accomplished. Now it's just back out and just see what's happening. And then also, like you said, this is a very short video, so there's probably a lot more that went on before this and probably after it. I don't know
I
if,
think it's important to note that post-impact, the target did descend. If the crosshairs were left in the same spot as in the system operators, letting it drift off screen so they can see it not occluded by the crosshairs, you'll see the object and the other objects that were ejected from it. You'll see it in a descent initially. It does look like it levels out later on in the flight. Again, we don't have enough information to know for sure. That's just based on general observations, but really, really hard to say, and certainly not definitively. But right there, you're seeing, I think, descend as the system operator is moving I think manually perhaps moving the crosshairs to keep it in frame.
okay. Yeah, and if they weren't moving the crosshairs, then it's just literally falling out of frame, which would be loss of altitude, I would assume, right?
Yeah, I would assume so.
Okay.
I mean, it certainly looks unstable. It looks almost like a trash bag floating in the wind right there.
Yeah.
Uh, but like you said, it does change from the blanket trash bag balloon look to actually a spheroid later on, and it looks like it actually has horizontal lift. So, or horizontal flight, excuse me.
Yeah, it's certainly strange. And y- you thought up, yeah, you got to think through the material science too. So it's like, how could this be? How could this be a rigid object, which I truly believe it is based off of just these two frames. I'll keep hammering that. The balloon theory thing really bothers me. It could be a balloon, but maybe it's a balloon made out of some incredible material, right? The first thing that came to mind was carbon fiber. I very quickly went out and to see if I could find what carbon fiber looks like when it gets broken, essentially, right? So you take carbon fiber, it's just laid, it's just layers of glass essentially, or carbon, carbon filaments, and they get weaved together. They get mixed in with a resin, and it creates an incredibly strong, rigid structure. However, that incredibly strong, rigid structure, once it gets compromised, it basically turns into like a beach towel because all of the molecules that are in there that keeps those filaments or the fibers locked in place, once they get destroyed, I guess is the best way to say it, then everything gets unlocked, and then all you have are the fibers that are left behind. So that's where things get really interesting, is because whatever this is, it's either extremely highly advanced, maybe, I don't know, we're just surmising, but based off of its ability to take the impact of a missile, deflect it, stay it somewhat intact afterwards, that's saying that this thing is extremely, extremely strong. I think that's like a minimum statement, right?
Well, Billy, I kind of also think, again, material science and concepts. I think if it was rigid, if it was a hard structure like a drone target used by the Navy, I think we would have seen debris blown off with the missile impact, probably seen an explosion. And like you've discussed, like a balloon, mylar, or latex skin wouldn't probably deflect that violently and maintain a shape of some sorts while it does so in those winds with all those G forces. We would probably expect to see more of just a ball of mess and the missile just punching right through. So
Yeah.
I think that leans on the fact that this might not be either. It might not be rigid or soft. It might be a hybrid of some kind, maybe a metamaterial, maybe it's UAP, maybe it's got some kind of weird material science going on here where it's behaving neither as a solid nor a soft skin.
Very unique. So, do you want to talk about the other things that it could possibly be? Because I know we were kind of going over like a was it a you said it was a sock, right? I've never heard of this
Yeah, can,
before.
can, can you bring up that document I sent
Yeah.
you and kind of look at, okay, there's a target sock that's used by the Navy. Again, that's just a piece of cloth on a tow line used I believe shoot missiles at or other things. Don't really know, but that is something that is used in the sky for target practice of some kind or another. And I'll just note that that's I think definitively what we're not seeing.
Mm.
We don't see a tow line, and as soon as you release these, I understand they just kind of crumple up and fall.
Yeah.
And then the target drone further down, again, they look like their own missile. I'd expect a contrail out of these. It is a potential that this could be it, but I don't see it. based on the fact that, again, this is a hard, aluminum, I would assume maybe carbon fiber, who knows, body, and I would expect a debris field immediately on impact, if not an explosion of the warhead based on the G forces from the impact. Because if it hit it head on, because it was oval shaped on IR, which means that the front of the oval I would assess as being the front, perhaps if it were one of these objects. So you're head on to one of these, I would expect an explosion or at least a large debris cloud, and that's not present. And then if you go down a little bit further, you see a couple examples of balloons. On the left, you have the U.S. Navy launching a balloon, looks like some kind of reflector on the bottom of it, perhaps. And then on the right, I think that's in India, and you see, interestingly, a small payload on that balloon. Now, understand these balloons cannot lift a lot, and you see both kinds. You see an oblong light bulb shape on the left, and on the right, you see a sphere-shaped balloon, both, I believe, out of latex. Again, I don't think either of these signatures match what we're seeing. We're seeing, like I said before, more of a dirigible style balloon, which I can't find any evidence on open source, and I know I couldn't find anything that would explain that shape being used by friendlies or enemies in that size. Certainly not tethered and out over the ocean. So really, doesn't quite pass the sniff test that, if it's a balloon, okay, what balloon is it? Who made it? Where's the evidence of that balloon style existing? Because it's certainly not anything we're looking at right now on the screen, at least from my perspective.
How about those aerogel? I think they were talking about aerogel, where it's the vacuum-based system, where it's not a balloon because it's not pressurized with a lighter than air inside of it. It's not helium or nitrogen, but it's actually pulls a pure vacuum, and
Yeah,
it's
I've never seen one of those in real life,
yeah.
even represented as a real object in an operational sense, if you will, in an actual balloon. I've heard people speculate about it and speculate that perhaps the Tic Tac is an aerogel of some kind. And I did say perhaps this is an exotic material, perhaps this is something non-traditional that's being targeted for reasons that we haven't been told. So I don't think that's outside the realm of possible. I will note this is, if our measurements are right, which who the hell knows, Tic Tacs are, from my experience, about 40 feet long. So this is about half the size of a Tic Tac. My measurements could be wrong. Perhaps our unit of measure taken out of the video is grossly undervalued, which would make it larger than we see. But I will say the Tic Tac matches the shape. It doesn't match the size, but we've seen the Tic Tacs be bendable as well. So if this is not a prosaic object or an experimental craft of some kind that's being splashed, perhaps it's made out of an exotic material, or perhaps it's a UAP as observed by others.
Yeah, and I think if it was aerogel, it's such a it's a very hard material, but if it got hit with a missile, I'm pretty sure it would just turn to dust. I don't think it
Yeah,
could deflect
I
it
would think so.
like this did.
Do
Okay,
you want
so
to start
now we're
talking about the items that were ejected?
yeah. I think I think it's time to get into that because that's really the meat and potatoes of this whole thing. That's the most interesting aspect. Besides the fact that we have an object that just took a major missile hit, deflected it, and is continuing to stay aloft and stay in a specific shape. Um, the three things that came out of it. Well, it looked. I think you say that one of them was already out, and then two other came out afterwards, right?
Yeah, let's look at the video real quick and
Yeah.
kind of go frame by frame and show that I don't think that these objects necessarily were inside of the target. I think they were attached to or on the skin or immediately adjacent to the craft, the target. And you can see as Billy kind of plays it up here, you're going to see, okay, missile inbound. The crosshairs of the MQ-9 are kind of occluding the fact that one of the ejected items is underneath that crosshair. And you'll see as the impact happens, you'll see the UAP move sharply to the left, and then you'll see three objects come into view. One of the objects is already in those crosshairs right there on the top left, and you're going to see it kind of materialize, if you will, and kind of form up and be viewable. And the last one either came from underneath or was inside of. You kind of see a breach in the skin of the target, and you see perhaps
Yep.
something coming out of that skin, and with that escaping, you see what looks like could be one of them may have been inside, but perhaps it was underneath. Really, really no way to know that. But certainly the first one was either on the skin or attached to the front. And I find that very peculiar that the place where the impact happened, remember the UAP was in a slow turn before the impact,
Hmm.
and it actually turned so that the one that was under the crosshairs was actually at the impact site. So that's very interesting to see that, that's the case. Now, playing devil's advocate, maybe that's a piece of material being blown off on the impact, but we'll get into in a few minutes or momentarily why I think that's less likely, just based on the congruent, same size and shape and lack of fluttering and looks like stabilized flight and movement of these things.
Hmm.
So, so on the one hand, playing the prosaic hat, if you will, it looks like, it was ejected off of the nose of this thing, and then going on the UAP slant, it looks like it was attached to the front, and that's where I'm leaning. Is it looks like it was attached to the front, and again, I find that peculiar that that it took the impact of the missile.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to see. It's we're getting into the low information zone, right? There's a lot of noise in the video compression and everything, so we're just really dealing with a lot of heavy contrast lines. So things could be hidden that we just don't see. But I'm with you in the fact that this carrot or this part of the reticle, right? It's a little bit too bright right here for me when you compare it to the other ones. So it
Billy,
does.
didn't you measure these objects before, and didn't you have a pixel count for how big they were? Because I think that would be helpful to understand. That's something that we can measure is, how many pixels across they are.
Yeah, I think it was like 30. It was like 34 pixels, 35 pixels. They were all the same size. They were identical in the amount of pixels.
Hmm. I think that's useful to understand as well because that kind of removes the possibility that this is just pixel blur, or that or there's edges that that basically they can't be spinning or doing other things we're not seeing.
Yeah. Yeah, and they look very identical, right? Unusually so. So I mean, it's these the way they present, they are pretty much three identical objects, both in their behavior and in their shape and heat, right? Their thermal output. And white
Now,
is hot, so we're hot in the middle, and we're
now
cold, right?
I did spend a lot of time doing military free fall,
Okay.
and as such, I have a lot of experience with night vision goggles and just my eyeballs jumping out of planes at night, and watching things spin and tumble in the sky from a moving object. And then also have jumped out of a balloon more than a handful of times, as well as helicopters and a hover. So what I find interesting is it's not apparent that there's any spinning or tumbling of these objects outside of perhaps for a frame or two on impact. They all look to have stable flight. Now, if you jump out of a moving aircraft or throw an object out of a moving aircraft that's not being steered, you're going to see tumbling, you're going to see flipping and spinning. If you pull up, Billy, that document again, kind of look at other objects that might be in the sky, see a radar reflector there. Again, if you were to drop that out of a balloon and that's standing still or moving with the wind, I would expect to see it stay exactly as it is. When you jump out of a stationary object or an object moving with the wind, typically the first 3 to 5 seconds of free fall, you're kind of stuck in whatever inertia that you have when you left the object
Mm-hmm.
in the air until you get air resistance from falling. And then you can make changes or adjustments or start to see spins or flipping or whatever is going to happen. So I would expect that if these were radar reflectors attached to this target, I'd expect to see them kind of stay where they're at, riding whatever inertia was provided from the missile impact, and then after 3 to 5 seconds, see them start to spin and flip and do different things. Similarly with chaff, I would expect a lot of cheetah flips, as we call them, movement in the sky, and I wouldn't expect it to stay stationary or even move around amongst each other like we're seeing here. And then the last thing to note is, again, a mortar. If you were to drop a mortar or something with fins on it from an object in flight or out of a balloon style scenario, and that we're basically riding the wind, Again, I would expect those to basically fall straight down. I would expect from the angle we're seeing to see an elongated form shaped like a bomb. Unfortunately, we're not seeing that, and I certainly wouldn't expect them to move amongst each other like we're seeing here. That's incongruent with prosaic items, unless it has its own power. Is this some kind of a next generation powered air defense capability? I mean, that's about the only prosaic item I could expect this to be doing what we're seeing, but I don't know of the existence of that technology, nor have I ever heard it discussed. So
Yeah. And I would assume if it was that, we wouldn't be and it was ours, we wouldn't be shooting it down.
yeah, I would assume as much. Yes.
Yeah. All right. So on this one, just to notice, what I did was I tracked on the object as it's moving down frame here, so we could see how the ejected objects move in relation to it. So if the assumption would be, as you just mentioned, right, they should just kind of fall out and they would come down and then fall behind it as the wind took them, right? But the whole wind situation here is very unusual or it's not unusual, but it's difficult to kind of figure out because we don't know what the forward speed of the object really is, right? Or if there is even forward speed. Were you able to figure that out at all when you looked at this?
No, not at all. I mean,
No.
I have no opinion. Well, my opinion is I think it is moving from right to left, but
Mm-hmm.
really, there's too many variables here and not enough information to say with any definitive nature of
Yeah.
what movement it has or doesn't have. Other than right now, it's in a descent from the impact. But like I said, later on, it looks like it does level out and fly level again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the last 22 seconds of the video, it does look like it maintains altitude, and it doesn't appear to be tumbling like it is here. It seems to kind of reshape itself and stay as a circle again, and we can look at that again. But the, there's some other pieces here that are of interest, and it's these little white flash bits right here, right? So there seems to be three. Let me see if I can
Yes.
pull it up in here.
Those the three items that were ejected from the target
Right here.
are very interesting. That's actually what brought me and Billy together on this topic was Billy was doing some analysis on the video and zoomed in and enhanced, and I said, "Oh my God, I've seen those shapes somewhere before. We should talk about this." Um, so before that, I was like, there's something prosaic, maybe something natural, something, it's a balloon, who knows, maybe some new technology. But these three items are very interesting, not just the way they're moving, but the way they're shaped and how they present.
Yeah, right here, very specifically, right here. So let's see.
So there's several classes of UAP that we haven't announced publicly. Um, this one is what we call the Class 10 or the Tesseract. Now, the Tesseract is amorphous. It changes shape a lot. It changes colors a lot. I don't know that it changes shape. It changes appearance. And the shape you're seeing these things take looks a lot like the shape we've seen with the Tesseract. And we've seen these all the way from 2022 to 2025. And I think I've probably got over 100 videos of these in 15, 20-minute long flights. And again, like everything else I've worked on, we have them EO or electro-optical visual, middle wave and short wave, as well as on radar. So these are objects in the sky we've seen repeatedly. Is one of the more interesting ones because you can see a black body. And the shape you're seeing in this video matches very closely to what we're seeing with these. Now, what's also interesting, Billy, if you can go back to the Hellfire video,
Mm-hmm.
and you see all three of these objects appear to be moving towards the original target. Call it the mothership, call it UAP. Don't think it's a balloon. And you'll notice all of them have a white spike pointing in the direction that I think they're moving right now. They're moving down, and then you'll see later on as they kind of turn, they stay orientated towards call it the mothership. So as they fall in a descent, and then I believe enter into actual controlled flight, you'll see those spikes kind of point towards their movement. Now that's the same sign we see with the Class 10. And Billy, if you back it up a little bit more, right? So you can see the four corners. That's something else we've noted is you see the four squares. The shape of the class 10, I believe, is actually a cube. So six-sided cube, obviously. And it really does match very closely what you're seeing there. And this is Billy's rendition of, or version of what we think the class 10 looks like, more or less. And that's kind of what we're seeing here as well in this video. Again, this is what brought us together and made us really say, huh, this doesn't seem prosaic. This doesn't seem natural. The fact that all three objects have the same shape and have that center spike of energy or whatever it is pointing towards direction of flight or movement really is anomalous and different. It makes us think that this isn't something benign and normal.
Yeah, it's when I saw that, it was a, I won't say it was a eureka moment, but it was certainly a moment. It's like, oh man, you got to be kidding me. So I know what people are going to say. Why is this stuff so blurry, right? So here's the thing. These things, they do not want to be seen. They are staying just as far away as they possibly can stay, and it puts them right at the absolute limits of the sensor systems that are being used to capture them. But the fact that they're blurry and far away doesn't detract from what we have right here. So the the number of different hits that we have, and this was just me looking through one video that James sent me, and these are all frames out of that one video where it was extremely similar to what we have here. And the behavior is like what James says. When these things are moving, these spikes are almost like, I'm just going to say they're like plasma, because they look like plasma to me, because they're just like puffs of energy that just pop out. And it feels like to me that they're channeled between the edges, right? That's why we always see the corners and they're dark, right? Meaning they're, well, this is electro-optical. So this is actually color, right? This was a color video that we pulled this out. So I would assume, and it could be incorrect, but if we had the color rendition of this capture, we would probably see some colors in the middle there. And if we can get that, that would be kind of a, okay, yeah, we got something pretty darn close to what we've been seeing in the past. So
Billy,
behaviorally, go ahead, James.
there's a couple of these that are very clearly aligned to what we're seeing in the Hellfire video. I don't know if you can pull one up and kind of let people see a little bit more detail, because this is a little bit small on the screen maybe for folks to see. Um, but yeah, that one right there, uh, uh, pan to the right a little bit, please.
This way,
Right there.
this guy.
So that right there, so that spike in this instance, that UAP was moving in the direction of the spike. It was moving up and then to the right. And you see the four corners. And what's interesting is a lot of times on the class 10s, you see where his mouse is right now, the bottom left corner, you see it's a bigger corner. So, and that's a common appearance. Hard to say if that's the angle that we can see it from. That's common to have one corner bigger than the others. And again, I don't know why that is, but that's something unique that we see here. And I think we're seeing that with the Hellfire video as well. And there's a lot more to be had. We're not doing a class 10 workup here and kind of going over all the details. That's why we're not showing a video and we're not showing the rest of the information, because there's some very interesting findings with the class 10. One thing I do want to point out with the class 10 is the class 10 has been noted to be transported by other UAPs. This is interesting that we are seeing a shape congruent with a class 10 come from this object, and perhaps that means that this is a class 10. I would find it dubious to expect that that just a prosaic occurrence happened here. A missile hits a enemy or unknown object in the sky, and out pops objects that look just like the class 10. You see the lower right corner of that Hellfire missile does look kind of like a little bit bigger than the other corners. Again, that could be the angle, who knows. But definitely a lot of similarities, and those similarities, can't be a coincidence.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. That's one thing for sure. And I can tell you, if we were able to get the EO, and for folks, we keep saying EO. EO is electro-optical, and all it means is it's the visual spectrum. So it's like using your phone on your camera, or your camera on your phone, right? These weapon systems, they're going to have a little bit more of an expanded range that they can see. They'll go a little bit more into the the violet, ultraviolet, and a little bit into the infrared zone. Similar to how I've actually modified my personal camera to be full spectrum, which most of the astrophotographers will do to allow it to capture, some additional wavelengths. So I believe most of the weapon systems that use EO have that expanded wavelength, so they can just get more information, more data. And man, I knew if we could just get that for this UAP video that just came out of the hearing, we would know pretty quickly if it was one of these class 10s, because the signature is very easy to see with the amount of colors that you see. It's extremely energetic. They burst like little jets, right, as they're moving. So it's pretty obvious when you see it in color. This is kind of a big deal in my mind, right? I mean, there's a lot of supposition that we have to do because we just don't have a lot of data. So we're just basically just going off of all the information that we're seeing on the video and what was talked about in the hearing. So there's not a lot. There's a little bit of data that was provided kind of in the data blocks in the side and the corners, which we're able to use for some trigonometry for figuring out, slant range and altitudes and that kind of stuff. So we did have some good information there. But for the most part, James, I don't know if you feel the same way about this. It's just adding more information to the total story that is kind of falling in line with what we're seeing over and over again. I know for me, with a lot of people sending me videos, and I love getting the videos from everybody out there, it really helps me see patterns in the data, like the jellyfishes, right? The jellyfishes are my favorite one right now because they show up in places, then all kinds of other UAPs show up. But the fact that we're seeing so many of them and they're all identical adds more and more credibility to them being a true object in our air, right? They're actually flying around the planet. And we're starting to get in the same, we're kind of going down the same path with this now with the Class 10. We've have other recordings of it, both in radar and optics. And now we have another one, right, that just came out of nowhere, that just dropped on us in the hearing. So again, just more data, right? More correlating data, and it just helps build out the story.
And I do think it's important to note that I think the two truly anomalous things from the Hellfire video, number one is the way that the principal target reacted to the missile impact. I think that's anomalous. Mm-hmm. I would love for folks more educated, perhaps with naval weapon systems or Air Force weapon systems and experience perhaps shooting objects out of the sky with missiles. Perhaps they have more information to share on their observations. Perhaps somebody might have a video of a similar impact. We would love to hear and understand what prosaic target is used, what's it called, who makes it. Are there similar videos showing such an impact from a Hellfire missile? And then the second thing is the 3 items ejected from the principal target. I'll call it the UAP and mothership. The three items ejected, again, where are those found? Who makes them? What objects are those if they are prosaic? I don't think it's sufficient to say, oh, that's a balloon and that's debris. I think we've shown that there's a myriad of evidence that suggests it's not the case. And I think really the burden is on the folks saying this is prosaic to show us the money, show us how this is prosaic, explain these 4-cornered Class 10 tesseract lookalikes, explain the spikes facing the direction of flight, explain the deflection of the balloon. I am completely open to those things. We don't have enough data yet to make any declarations or determinations, but we have anecdotal evidence and maybe perhaps more than anecdotal to say there's something anomalous here that needs to be explored and discovered and discussed. And I would love for debunkers, as much as I cringe at saying the word debunker, just because it denotes a lack of sincerity and effort, I would love for folks to show us items that look like this, show us something like a balloon, if you will. Again, show us that shape. Where does it exist? Who's blowing those up? Who's making them? And then also the same thing for the Class 10, perhaps, because I would love to be wrong here. I'm not married to UAPs. I'm very interested in the truth and pursuing the truth of things and understanding what's in our skies and what threats they represent, if there is a threat. Because as is evidenced if this thing was over the ocean and shot down by MQ-9 Reaper and a Hellfire, could it not be over Wisconsin or New York? And the evidence is that we're seeing reports from Europe through the Americas, a lot of North America, of similar objects, whether they're jellyfish or tic tacs in our airspace, in our skies, uh, with manned aviation in vicinity ad nauseum. So, I think there is a threat here of perhaps loss of life or impact with manned aviation and manned assets. So I think that's the big question here of was this a Houthi Iranian-made weapon system? Was this a U.S. NATO assessment of a technology, or was this anomalous activity in the airspace? And if it is anomalous, it matches the concepts we discussed, as well as presents the question of what threat does this represent to manned aviation, operating at 12,000 feet MSL, which is well within controlled airspace when it is over land or near airports.
Yeah. Yeah. My big question is, what is it doing, right? If it's not something that we made or put up there, what is it doing, right? It's doing something, because they're not out there doing that and for no reason whatsoever. It's very clearly they were on mission. So what is that? Is it protection, right? Um, yeah, and like James said, I'm not married to the UAP thing either. I same thing. I hate the word debunk, but there's a lot of times where I'll get a lot of videos and I have to explain to people that that's really not something. It's this or that. So I do try to teach people as well when they send me videos that, this is the reason why this is what you're seeing and why it looks like that, and this is what that is. Um,
And we did that tonight, right? I sent you a video off X of somebody filming what looked like a Tic Tac, and I
yeah,
said, it sounds like they're outside their car, but I didn't analyze it. You pulled up and said, nope, they're inside their car. It's a reflection. And immediately we're like, yep, that's just somebody in their car not realizing that they're filming an image that's reflected off their window.
yeah,
So, you know,
yeah, yeah. Pepper's ghost. That's a Pepper's ghost trick.
yeah.
All right. So I think that pretty much covers it, James. I mean, we talked about the impact. We talked about, all the things kind of surrounding it that our thoughts were, and then brought in the class 10. So now we know that that's one of the classes of UAP that's been seen by you guys. It's just crazy. I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah, it's quite coincidental to say the least.
Yeah.
Um, so maybe we'll get more information. Hopefully, uh, uh, Congress or the executive branch can get some information released on this incident. Maybe some more imagery. Maybe the other ship set that actually launched the missile. Maybe their video is available, or maybe there's EO available to conduct better analysis. If I were asking Congress to release data, that's what I would ask for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like I said, I'd love to have the EO for this one, because that would be pretty conclusive as far as matching it. So.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate your time, James. This was very informative. And like I said, I appreciate the openness and the willingness to talk about this and share what you've seen, because this is before your Skywatcher days. So we're digging into some archival footage that you have. Yeah, just getting more information, more data, and building the story. Okay, James. Well, thank you very much. And we'll be talking soon.
Great being here, Billy. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for the discussion.
Yep. I'll see you.
Bye.
How stupid.
Yeah, I know. It's so
Go
lame.
buy it.
Yeah, same problems.